Good morning and welcome speakers and audience to the fourth webinar in the All Energy Decarbonise Virtual Summit, and the 21st one we've held since May. There are around 470 people gathered in our virtual audience for UKRI's Road to Net Zero, Investing for Impact. UKRI, of course, stands for UK Research and Innovation, and is the umbrella organisation which brings together 7 research councils and Research England, and importantly, to All Energy and Decarbonise, Innovate UK, with whom we've had a close relationship for many years. Indeed, each year at our duo of shows, Innovate UK has run a clean growth and infrastructure innovation showcase, connecting innovators to investors, potential supply chain partners, and new customers to drive forward their organisations and the UK's clean growth. Thank you, UKRI, for sponsoring this session and keeping the close working relationship going. I'm Judith Patton, Project Director of our duo of shows and the co-creator of All Energy way back at the start of the century. It's time for just a few housekeeping points. Whilst I talk briefly, my slide will help you get the greatest benefit possible during your time with us today and afterwards. And somebody's pointed out to me that I must tell you that presentations will be online in due course. The video itself will be available later in the day. It is important that if you would like to ask questions or rate this webinar, you shrink your screen from full screen to be able to see where to do these things. And if you opt for the attachments button, you can see all 8 of the webinars being held during this virtual summit. Yesterday's already available on demand, and as I've said, today's will be end of today. There's no quick-fire Innovate UK showcase today, but we do have Innovate UK's Director of Clean Growth, Ian Michael, with us to chair this UKRI session to explain about ISCF. UKRI is great at acronyms, and introduce 5 challenge directors to help you understand how you could be involved in a flagship challenge-led innovation programme designed to bring together researchers and businesses to tackle the big societal and industrial challenges of today. Without more ado, I'd like to wish all of you here today and your families good health in these worrying times, and now pass over to Ian and wish you all a highly productive 90 minutes. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Judith. It's a pleasure to be back and give you the latest update. Although it's clearly a shame not to be all together for All Energy in Glasgow for a few days this year. And good morning to our audience as well. Thank you for joining us. As Judith said, we've got 400 to 500 people registered and online this morning, so it's great to see you all. For this insight into government and UKRI's flagship £2.6 billion business-led challenge fund presentation. It was established in 2017, so this is a good point to do a bit of an update. It's known, as Julia said, as the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. So if you hear the acronym ISCF a few times this morning, you'll know what it means. And what ISCF does is it focuses on some of the most challenging problems facing industry today, and with close relationships to government's missions. It's just worth stepping back for a moment as well. ISCF doesn't just focus on net zero. The focus this morning is net zero, but ISCF also focuses on health and health and our aging society, the future of mobility, and also the AI and data economy. And let's be frank, we're in a sort of global R&D arms race, to keep the UK relevant, globally competitive, and prospering, through the 21st century and beyond. So today we're going to get an update on how we're doing this in some of the net zero ISCF programs. And with the UK's 2050 net zero target, lots of sectors will need to change. Often we think, oh, it's the energy sector, or if we're really narrow, we think maybe the electricity sector, but actually it's much, much broader across the whole economy. And UKRI's role is helping businesses prosper from this change, not cracking all the problems, but how do we get businesses prospering from these changes that are going to happen during this century, and keeping as I said, keeping the UK globally relevant. And ISCF is a mechanism in helping whole sectors of the economy transform to meet this net zero challenge. So in terms of the format, we've got 5 speakers. Each speaker is going to briefly present for 6 to 8 minutes, which will give us plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So please submit your questions as we go, as Judith's given you the right buttons to press and all of that kind of stuff. If you've got questions for specific people, maybe just put those in brackets as well, so I know who particularly to target them to, and feel free to put a couple of people in brackets as well if you like. And I'll put them to the panel at the Q&A session right at the end. So we're going to do all the presentations and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. And I prepared some questions if needed, but frankly, I'd rather ask yours. So please keep a healthy set of questions coming through. The bios are on the website of all the speakers, so there's no need for introductions. And my plan is to aim a little bit before 1 o'clock to give everyone a bit of a comfort break, maybe a cup of tea, and catch up on see how the US election is panning out. So let's get straight to it. First on our running order this morning is Bryony Livesey, who's the Challenge Director for the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge. Over to you, Bryony.
Thanks very much. It's such a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm going to talk about industrial decarbonisation, and clearly if we're going to meet net zero, many sectors have got to decarbonise. One of those is the industrial sector, and we get emissions from industry from the inherent industrial processes we're using, and also from the power that's needed to make those processes work. And what we're doing in this challenge is looking at how to decarbonise industries in something that we call clusters. So that means groupings of industries that are all fairly close together within a region, and we're trying to decarbonise them as a group. And the reason for that is a lot of work's been done in the UK on the most cost-effective ways of decarbonising, and it has been shown that a lower cost will be incurred if we look at clusters of industries rather than just an industry on its own. And part of the reason for that is that we can make sure at the beginning that the infrastructure that we design to support decarbonisation actually meets the needs of the whole region rather than just one particular sector. And we also realise that within a cluster, it's easier to share information and knowledge and actually learn from other people. So that this programme is designed to promote decarbonisation of specific cluster regions. And I'm going to talk you through a bit about what we're doing. So we work very closely with government. Within BEIS, they have something called the Industrial Clusters Mission, whose goal is to establish a first net zero carbon industrial cluster by 2040, and at least one of these low carbon clusters by 2030. And within our industrial decarbonisation challenge, what we are then doing is delivering the first stages of the low carbon clusters by 2030. So this is around the technologies that we'll need and the infrastructure that's going to be required. And we're trying to make sure that we develop all of this whilst also boosting the competitiveness of these key industrial regions. The idea is to increase investment in these regions and create new high quality jobs and a low carbon industrial sector. And when we do this, this is going to be the first net zero industrial cluster in the world. So it's a fantastic achievement when we get there. The industrial clusters are shown on this map as blue blobs. The size of the blob relates to how much emissions they have within their cluster region. And this is from industrial processes only, not from the power that's used in that region. So the biggest blob is in Humberside with 10 million tonnes of CO2 per year, and then closely followed by South Wales at 9.5 million, and then the other clusters are in the northwest and in Teesside and Scotland and down in Southampton. So what we're trying to do is change these regions and completely transform the emissions profiles from them and make sure that we are on track to achieve net zero by 2050. And this is not only about decarbonising the industries. A lot of the programs that we're running are about things like hydrogen production, which has got massive impacts on many different industrial sectors and different regions. We're trying to make sure we can keep these industries attractive for investment and make sure knowledge sharing happens and that we've got the research that we need. So we've got 3 strands to the challenge, all of which are of great significance. So first of all is around developing plans. So this is an area where each region's coming together to make sure they've got a plan for their entire region on how they will meet net zero. And they're all in the process of getting their funding now, with many, many different stakeholders involved in that, people from local authorities to small businesses to global companies all coming together to make a plan. And then we've got our deployment project, which is where we are going to design the major infrastructure that we're going to need. So this is mainly around carbon capture and storage, which if you're not familiar with it, is about capturing carbon dioxide from industrial processes and then storing it safely offshore in perpetuity. And then we're also looking in the programme about how we will produce hydrogen cost effectively and at scale for the UK. And then we have a very substantial research arm as well, which is looking at what technologies might be coming along in the not too distant future that can have a real impact on achieving industrial decarbonisation. So all of these programs are delivered as a very close partnership with industry, and they all work together. So the idea is that we will share knowledge from different parts of the program and make sure that people from different regions share information with each other, but also within the different strands of the program, that people understand what's going on in terms of designing new technologies that might be applicable and other things like that. So in terms of opportunities to get involved, there are opportunities to get involved in the cluster plans. Many, many organisations are involved already. And of course, in the Research and Innovation Centre, which should start within the not too distant future. Still planning the programme for there. And just a final slide. Obviously, I'd already said that our partnership with government in this programme is really important. And just to emphasise that, when we announced one of our most recent competitions, we did get acknowledged by the Prime Minister that cutting costs and carbon across our British industries is really important part of obviously reaching net zero, but also making sure that we have a green and sustainable recovery. So that's all I was going to say for now, because I just wanted to introduce you briefly to the programme, and I look forward to talking to you later. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Bryony. And I do love a map. It's great to see where the areas of focus are. So that's brilliant. I think you've set us up really nicely for some questions later. So hopefully questions are starting to flow off the back of yours. It is worth just saying we do have a few challenges today. You probably noticed with the sun out, I'm not particularly well lit. And again, Bruce, who's coming up next, has got some scaffolding going on around the house during his presentation, so just in case we hear any sounds from that. So just introducing Bruce now. Bruce Adderley, Challenge Director of Transforming Foundation Industries. Over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Ian, and good morning, everybody. So like Bryony, I'll aim to give you a brief introduction to the Transforming Foundation Industries Challenge and where we sit in relation to net zero and what we're doing. The foundation industries, as we define them in terms of the challenge, are 6 sectors that you can see on the slide there. And just to give the scale of what we're talking about, They represent something like a workforce of about 500,000 people in the UK, and represent well over 50 billion a year in terms of GVA. So significant parts of the UK economy, and probably most importantly, they support a wide range of other sectors in the UK economy, and we really need to make sure that they're able to achieve what they know they need to do and want to need to do on net zero as we move through that journey over the coming years and decades. You'll see as I talk the next few minutes that there are areas where this challenge is very much aligned alongside Bryony's. She's already mentioned that you've got lots of different industries in her clusters, and that leads to looking at certain areas of technology. From a TFI perspective, we're more sector focused, but cross-sector focused. We're trying to do everything in a cross-sector manner to help them overcome challenges on the route to net zero that they've not really been able to get to grips with so far on their own. So what does my challenge contain? Well, we've got 5 work streams. The first of those is a big pilot scale facility, primarily aimed at the glass sector, but a facility that the other foundation industries will be able to come and run programs on and work with the glass sector on technologies that are jointly of interest. And that was actually announced formally last week. So if you look in the press, you'll find plenty of information about that. We're trying to do technology right across the sort of TRL range from 3 to 7, get new innovations underway, broaden the pipeline of what's available, and hence we've got a large-scale collaborative research and development program funded by both UKRI and industry to deliver right across that spectrum. And we've a number of calls that have run and will be running, and I'll come back to that in a couple of slides' time. We've also got £10 million in place to set up a multidisciplinary academic hub focused on transferring technology out of the academic arena and into the foundation industries. And the process of putting that hub together is underway right now, and it will launch in April next year. We've a work stream then to help the sectors come together, talk about and put into the public domain pieces on their key areas of innovation and where they need to make policy points, etc. That will also be supported by the academic community, and as such, we're in the process of setting up a network plus focused again on the foundation industries, and look out for an announcement on that within the next couple of weeks. And then finally, we've got a work stream where we're bringing in private equity investment to sit alongside our investment, looking at bringing through fast developing technologies from small SMEs and startups. If I was to do it at its most broadest, I would say that TFI looks at energy efficiency and resource efficiency. And as we've worked with the sectors to develop the program, this slide just highlights 4 of the main broad areas where we're looking to pull through innovations that work on a multi-sector basis. We've been running a series of webinars in recent weeks on many of these, so please have a look out for those. If you can't find them, come and contact me. And indeed, we're having a wrap-up on those in a session next week. In terms of things we've done so far, I've already mentioned the glass pilot facility. That's announced now. I think the key thing to say is it's not only ourselves as UKRI funding, it's a lot of funding coming from the glass sector, £20 million or more, but also investment of a similar scale from the Liverpool City region and St Helens Council itself. And it's a combination of those 3 stakeholders coming together that have really made this happen. And that's been one of the great successes we've had so far in the challenge. In terms of a specific project example, we launched a fast track call. It was our first call under the challenge last year. And this project, South Wales with both eyes wide open, is one of the successful proposals. And interestingly enough, this consortium of companies first got together to talk about things more in relation to Bryony's challenge and the cluster approach and needing to work together on decarbonisation. Out of that, they then realised that there's a lot of other things that they can work together on in a cross-sector way, and have put forward this proposal to us on resource efficiency, and this project is now running. So speaking of competitions and opportunities to engage with the programme, my final slide here is just a list of the opportunities that are coming up over the next 12 to 18 months. And what you can see there, I hope, is that there are a lot of opportunities to engage with us on a number of different levels, right through from small, possibly feasibility CR&D projects, all the way through to demonstration projects, and as I've mentioned before, the investor competition. Hopefully that gives you an initial insight, and we can talk further in the Q&A. Back to you, Ian.
Thank you, Bruce. That is great. As we said at the beginning, net zero, has got to be tackled by lots of different sectors. It's not just, the supply side of energy. It's the big users as well, often very hard to address areas as well. It's also good to see companies coming together to solve shared challenges. So that's tremendous. Thank you. Next up, we've got Rob Saunders, who's the Challenge Director for Prospering from the Energy Revolution. And I don't think you've got any scaffolding or anything like that going on, Rob?
No, I haven't got any scaffolding, not at this point. Hi, everyone. Great to be back at All Energy. And I want to give you a real whistle-stop tour through what we've been up to for the past 2 years on the Energy Revolution programme, and how we're busy laying the foundations for a local, better net zero. And I'll tell you a bit about all of that. Firstly, the revolution is now. This is not about Washington, DC at this point in time, but this is a reflection that the energy revolution is happening. This isn't something that's going to happen in 5, 10 years' time. It's right now. Look at the price plummets of batteries, the cost plummeting of batteries, renewables. Look at the AI capabilities that are coming into the energy sector. Look at the fact that Ørsted, a renewable energy company, very recently became more valuable than BP. Chaos in the oil and gas majors in terms of their valuations. All of these things feel like they're at real tipping points. But fear not, because what we're trying to do in this programme is intelligently join up all the best bits of this revolution in ways that we can live better net zero lives in future. But why local? Why is this important? Well, firstly, because technically a lot of this new energy technology is very small scale and lends itself to local application very well. But more importantly than that, our demand is local. We need to hook up supply and demand, and half of that equation is local. Our heat is always going to be local. We're not going to pump heat around the country. Mobility is primarily local. And we have the capability to join up lots more local assets in intelligent ways than we did even a couple of years ago through our digital capabilities and artificial intelligence. But more than just technically, economically, we can capture more value from the energy system on a local basis and create jobs and create prosperity around the country by taking local approaches. And socially, we live our lives locally. And perhaps as importantly as any of what I've just said, we kind of trust locally differently than we do nationally. So if we're going to engage people, doing that locally is super important. And as the Committee on Climate Change say, more than half the things we need to do to get to net zero are as much about social change as they are about technical change. So local, really important. So we knew all of that theory, but the missing link was actually providing the evidence that local approaches can really work. So we put this programme together to provide evidence, really, to prove investable, scalable, local energy business models that can achieve scalable investment, and achieve a few other objectives as a result of that. And resulting in a set of activities that looks like this in the programme architecture, primarily funding a series of amazing projects around the country that are looking to prove these integrated energy models. 4 demonstrators, 10 design projects, some more standard kind of innovation work, particularly in data, and all held together with some research and capability provision, pulling the best in from across the UK. The designs and demonstrators that we've got are truly world leading. 4 demonstrators ranging from Orkney right down to the south coast, those 4 green dots you see, and then a pipeline of future projects that are just starting to design integrated local energy systems, and those red dots right across the UK. Let me just give you a bit more insight into those. All of them are trying to do at least town scale clean power, heat and mobility services in their projects, integrating across those things. They're all trying to integrate intelligently how consumers want things, and they're all trying to do it in scalable, investable ways. We don't think there's a one-size-fits-all here. We think there are going to be a variety of different models that are going to be needed in different places. As an example of that, 2 projects around Oxford and Oxfordshire that are taking very different approaches. Energy Superhub Oxford is connecting directly to the transmission, the high voltage national grid, in order to do super fast charging of EVs, hybrid grid scale storage, and heat pump provision into the Cowley area, all optimised by an IT system. In Oxfordshire, Project Leo is taking a very different approach, adding intelligence to the local grid and trying to act as a neutral market enabler that provides competitive services off that intelligent grid and makes the best use of local net zero resources. So these are going to work complementarily together to try and make Oxford and Oxfordshire a real hub for local net zero energy services. One of our design projects is Green Skies in Islington in central London, which is trying to make the best use of a 5th generation heat network, a low temperature heat network that can scavenge waste heat from a number of different heat sources, such as the underground data centres. And it's able to do that because of its low temperature operation. And then the heat gets upgraded in demand centres around the region. Looking at somewhere completely different. Anybody recognise this? This is there, southwest corner of Wales. It's Milford Haven Port, probably about as far as you get from central London. And what they're trying to do here is convert the whole port, or figure out how to convert the whole port and the surrounding domestic and business ecosystem to a hydrogen system. So we do think there's going to be very different needs from different areas around the UK, and that this local approach will develop a patchwork of different systems that will need to work within a national context. And we're very pleased to see the variety of kind of archetypes that are coming through these projects. We're learning ridiculously fast on this stuff. And I can tell you more in Q&A if you want, but some of the highlights that we're learning at the moment. This is not easy stuff. It's complex integration. It needs lots of actors, all with slightly different takes on the world, to work together to a common goal. It often needs local authorities to play a real convening role in that stuff. And the capability is often somewhat lacking in local authorities who have been rather hollowed out over recent years in capability. Finance and regulation are key enablers of this stuff. And we're working very closely with those communities to try and help share knowledge and share the way forward with them. But last but not least, we know it's hard, but we're also starting to prove that the benefits are really there. starting to build the evidence base that shows clean local approaches can deliver net zero for less money than business as usual. And that is really important that we all get our heads around to be able to scale this in future. I'll leave it there for now and look forward to engaging with you in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. That's great. I think the only real response to that is Viva la Revolution. Also really refreshing to see that the focus is on, social change as well as, the technical aspects of this, building local trust, building local prosperity as well. So again, a nice map across the UK, a bit like Brian is just showing how broad this is. Right, we're going to hand over to Jackie now. I should also say that Jackie's also having some challenges. Her internet provider is digging up the street outside. Hopefully it's just the tarmac and not the actual cables themselves. But introducing Jackie Murray, Deputy Challenge Director for the Faraday Battery Challenge. Jackie, over to you.
Thanks, Ian. Right, I'm going to just see if I can get my slides to come up. Hopefully that's going to work. And here they are. Right. Oh. Maybe. Can we all see those? I'm not going to get a reply now, am I? Okay, so I'm Jackie Murray. I'm the Deputy Director of the Faraday Battery Challenge, as Ian said. Ironically, my history also covers at some point Pembroke Power Station, which is in the middle of Pembroke, Milford Haven, as Rob just shared. You can now see my slides. So. Yeah, okay, you can, that's great. So I'm just going to start. So Faraday Battery Challenge is a £318 million programme. This presentation is going to feel slightly different because Faraday has been going for three and a half years now. It was one of the first wave of the ISCF. It's I think still the biggest in terms of its funding. And it's delivered in 3 pillars. And I'll talk through why those pillars in a moment. But actually what you have is over £100 million worth of science going on in 9 institutions, plus actually it's a total of 22 different academic institutions in total doing multidisciplinary research on batteries. And actually what they're doing is they're trying to answer the question that industry has around batteries in terms of the chemistries, in terms of what's going on through their life cycle, in terms of how you manufacture them. They're also asking the questions in the laboratories across the UK of what's the next generation of batteries, what's beyond lithium ion. And there's a lot of excitement around solid state batteries and lithium sulfur batteries. But also around sodium ion, for example, which is a cheaper electrochemistry base, and that's one of the reasons you can see those 9 big projects. We also have spent over 90 million in collaborative R&D, and that's 124 different organisations, and that's industry and research organisations and academia working together, really looking at how you can take for that academic research and get it to prototype stage, get it through those TRLs, through that valley of death. And actually what's really exciting about that is that ecosystem that's creating in that space. The third pillar is a bit different, and the third pillar is the Battery Industrialisation Centre, and that's a 200,000 square foot site just next to Coventry Airport that's due to open any moment. Thank you, COVID, for adding a layer of complexity and challenge into that, but it's still an incredibly relevant site. It is the first of its kind in Europe. And really what it is, and as a manufacturing engineer, this bit really excites me, is it's 100 engineers and with a load of state-of-the-art manufacturing equipment that can take your prototypes and actually iron out all the things you need to do to get it to a commercial product with you and with your staff. And the reason that's important is actually if you're producing batteries, the last thing you want to do is interrupt that, your current processes, your current battery factory. And so the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre is a real gem in terms of the UK's offer internationally, allowing companies to come and work with OEMs, come and work collaboratively with this ecosystem to really get battery products out into the market. What's actually in the big circle here, this ellipse, is about 450 researchers, probably something similar in those 124 different organisations working on the different projects, and 100 engineers in the Battery Industrialisation Centre. And what we find, and as we work through this challenge, is that ecosystem is incredibly useful. And it's that oriented collaboration approach that seems to be really, really impactful. So it's not just day job, it is definitely these people coming together to work to solve all the issues so that we can leap forward in batteries in the UK. But what I thought I'd talk to you about a little bit is a graph, right? So let's have a bit of engineering in here. I quite often get asked why batteries? And the answer is it's not just batteries, but there's a very specific reason why batteries are all over electric vehicles at the moment. And it comes down to this graph. So this is a graph of effectively the automotive fleet emissions for CO2 and how it bumps into the climate change requirements for CO2 and the flight path that has been regulated in Europe. So whilst the regulations are in Europe, actually places like California and potentially China have very similar agreements. And when looking at things like COP26, you'll see this being discussed in depth. And you can see that actually the blue line, the car companies were making pretty good progress, right? And actually start-stop technologies, KER systems on our internal combustion engines were really powering forward and reducing the CO2. However, what sort of happened in around 2015, 2016 is a real moment of realizing that actually they were hitting the limits of what you could do with internal combustion engines for a fleet, right? So if you're looking at this and thinking my Toyota Yaris only is down at 75 grams per kilometre driven, actually that's because it's best in class. And actually the score for Toyota, for example, is the average of all of its cars, including its SUVs in this number. So you have a much higher number because of that, but also it's your legacy. So it's the Yaris's that came before the latest one as well. And actually in 2016, our company was sat there going, hold on a second, somebody's telling me I need to be by 2030 down at 67 grams per kilometre and maybe even lower for climate change regulations. Now that gives me a problem. And that gives me a problem because I want to spend £1 billion on my next production architecture for whatever car I'm about to bring onto the market. It will take me 42 months to develop it, but it's got to be in production for 10 years. And that's because my break-even point doesn't come until the end of year 7, early year 8. So actually for me to make a lot of money or enough money on my vehicles, I've got to have it in production for 10 years. So actually back there in 2016, 17, I'm starting going, well, hold on a second. Actually, I need full electric. My hybrid offer isn't going to bring down my averages anywhere near as fast as the regulations require. What I actually need to do is electrify my core fleet. So this is why you see the sudden step change. I thought useful at this moment just to talk about that. And the other reason is obviously the £8 billion potential market predicted by 2035. The UK is very good at making cars go fast. We're very good at manufacturing internal combustion engines. We make more of them than we do cars. And so you can really see how that's a really big push for the UK to capitalise on battery propulsion. What I want to show you as well is this slide. This is one put together by WMG. And it's because people always ask me, what's the answer? And the answer is it's complicated. Actually, this is just the 4 clusters around vehicles, right? And you're looking at, in front of you, you're looking like the hybrids and those sorts of batteries. You'll see them, that's the KER's battery actually is in one of those very high performance hybrids up there. Coming through the mild hybrids that we all know and love. But then also you can start to see the cluster around low-cost mobility, potentially marine, auto. So you can see these clusters, right? And actually each of these clusters have very different battery types to deliver. So we know that actually there's a load more challenge. What's not in this graph, and I think set us up for this discussion, is actually some of the other batteries that are needed and the other electrification solutions that are needed. But I put this up because actually I get asked about hydrogen and ammonia and how do I see it going. What I see is that surface transport and aviation and shipping are the most stubborn of the lines on this graph of reducing emissions. As we reduce the emissions, the demands go up, right? So car emissions have come down greatly, as I just showed you, and yet the total amount isn't coming down, and that's due to demand. So obviously this year is going to be really interesting with COVID, but actually used to know. So the answer is, what do we know? And we know for light duty that if I wanted to place a £1 billion contract or something of that ilk for propulsion system, then actually I'm going to struggle to find a hydrogen fuel cell company that would be able to meet that at the quality and the liabilities and warranties and all those sorts of commercial requirements of a contract like that. So I know that I'm going to do batteries for my light duty. I'm probably also going to be able to transfer a lot of that technology into sea light duty, and we're also seeing light aircraft, for example, and eVTOL coming into that battery space. But it very soon starts to cross over, even on the land. If you're looking at the next Range Rover, that may well be a hydrogen system. Hydrogen systems do also have the disadvantage of being slightly more complex. For something that's as volume as car production, you're challenging. So I'm pretty sure I will have run over. So I think at that point, I'll hand back to Ian.
Very good. Thank you, Jackie. That's perfect. Really good for giving us some insights into what's happening under the bonnets of our cars, or packed into the chassis maybe, and maybe inspire some of us to to think about our next car purchase. And of course, the disclaimer that it's batteries are not all about cars. There's other vehicle types too, and lots of other uses for batteries as well, as Jackie's presentation showed us. Right, that moves us on to our final presenter, Mike Pitts, who's the Deputy Challenge Director for Transforming Construction. Do please, as a sort of final reminder, to start getting your questions into the questions box, and I will start seeing them come up on my chat, and I shall put them to the audience after Mike. Not the audience, your questions. I'm going to put them to the panel. Right, Mike, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to join you here as well today. I think my slides are in place. Yeah, great. So yeah, we're going to talk about buildings and where the buildings fit into net zero. So if we're coming back to thinking about it, you saw some data from Jackie just then suggesting that we're coming down very slowly in terms of emissions for buildings and that kind of sector generally. And that's because we have a challenge in the way we heat both space and water in our buildings. There's lots of attention put on the fact that we're doing quite a good job of decarbonising the electricity system, but as Rob said earlier, heat is an issue, and the UK uses a huge amount of heat from gas at the moment. Most of our homes and a lot of commercial buildings, the heating for space inside them and water comes from gas, and at peak that can be 8 times the amount of electricity we're using. So where is all that energy going to come from? How are we going to build buildings that aren't on the gas grid in the future or using other heat sources? So some of that's being tackled by Rob. Some of the embodied carbon issues are being sorted by Bruce. So really what we're concerned with is how do we improve the energy efficiency of buildings so that we're using less of this in the first place. And that's the problem, because our buildings across our stock in the UK are generally rather leaky. There's lots of reasons for that. And that's mostly down to the way we design, build, and commission and then manage and use them. And there's issues across all of that space. And the challenge within transforming construction is to tackle all of that in one kind of smooth set of interventions. The sector needs to shift the way it does everything. But you can't hit net zero without tackling this leakiness in buildings from an energy efficiency perspective. In fact, putting renewable technologies in, the whole agenda there becomes much more doable when you have buildings that are energy efficient in the first place. So the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund here is one of the big aims really is to help sectors get ready for the future. You've kind of heard from Jackie, how do we make sure our automotive sector is producing the right kind of technology and supply chains for a future that's going to be more driven by net zero. And the same challenge here in construction is how do we build buildings in a way that they're more efficient, but also the whole process of producing them is more efficient. Because right now the challenge we have is that we have a sector that's largely driven by a skilled labour force. It's almost artisanal. Every building is almost a prototype. We're not capturing the lessons from one and bringing them into future designs and buildings in quite the way that something like the automotive or aerospace sector does. So can we take a more manufacturing-led approach to the way we produce our buildings? And the answer is yes. So we're trying to help what was already underway with the sector to accelerate towards using digital tools and manufacturing approaches and kind of standardizing processes so that we could build buildings in a different way and get a better outcome. The challenge is we have a system that's kind of set up and driven by cheapness. It's quite wasteful. So the belief is that if we can move towards an approach that is using a platform manufacturing kind of concept, where we have a standardized kit of parts, almost like a kind of Lego set from which we would build all buildings, we can then start to build up those efficiencies in the manufacturing supply chain and standardize the way we put buildings together. That doesn't mean they all look the same. What it does mean is the process is standardized. And the kind of targets we set for the challenge, which is 4 years in total, and we're in our third year now, £170 million challenge. We decided that we would try to hit some of these kinds of collective construction industry targets to reduce costs, reduce overall emissions, deliver buildings faster, and most importantly, eliminate that productivity gap we have with the rest of the economy for something like 15%. Can we be more productive? Can we build buildings with fewer people, but in a much more consistent way? And I'm pleased to say at this stage in the challenge, we've got very powerful examples of all of these kinds of targets being hit. And our job now is to scale those kind of things up and pull that whole approach through for the whole sector. A lot of that's been driven by a government in the UK here that understand this and want to change the way they procure buildings. So let me give you a few examples of where we've kind of achieved this that are particularly relevant for net zero. The first of those is if you're taking a platform approach and standardizing the way you put buildings together, that means you can much more rapidly adopt new technologies. So if you've got a standard size for your roof cassettes, you can start to make them in active forms so they can be solar integrated photovoltaics, or possibly even as with this building here, you've got facades on the front that trap warm air no matter what the time of year, and start to use that in an integrated way, the heating system. This is the active office on University of Swansea site and part of our active buildings effort. And this is an A+ rated building. That and the active classroom just behind it are designed to produce more energy in a year than they consume. There's some challenges with doing that, and that's the whole point in building them, is to learn how that works. But can we be much more integrated in the way we put these kind of buildings together? The platform approach is a particular success here for this land sector development that's happening in Southwark right now. This is being built. This was originally given planning permission as a normally designed building to be built the old-fashioned way with lots of people, and it's now been redesigned to be done using a platform approach. That's been prototyped with Easy Space, and who are a very innovative little business looking at manufacturing approaches to construction. And this whole building will be built using a repeated unit, which will take about 95% of it. As you can see, it still looks a very interesting building. So they will hit that kind of 15% productivity target. But what's really exciting is this building not only being the first platform built office block in the world, it will be net zero energy use in use, while also having much lower embodied emissions than other buildings. And possibly most important of all for net zero is we're working with the government to change the way it procures and designs and commissions buildings. And right in the vanguard of this is the Department for Education. And we're currently working with them to develop a design guide that allows platform-built schools to be completely net zero. And the idea is the lessons from this will be built into all future procurements from DFE of buildings. So several hundred new schools every year we built to net zero standards. And that's a way we can affect real change and pull through from the sector. So really what we're trying to do here is industrialize the approach to buildings within the UK, deliver much more impact. But we're only within the challenge allowed to focus at the moment on new builds. The next challenge is to take retrofitting all the existing stock, can we go back and take an approach to doing that? We know retrofit works. We know in a smooth set of interventions, we can take an old building and make it near net zero in terms of efficiency, quite simply. But the challenge of doing that is bringing the cost down and industrializing that as well. So that's possibly the future for this challenge. And that's the end of my presentation. So back to Ian.
Thank you, Mike. That's great. Those heat images of buildings are always a bit scary when you see all the heat flooding out of, particularly if it's your own house. I think you've also given us some great tips on, for people's own new builds or retrofit, energy efficiency first, followed by then renewables afterwards once you've reduced that need for energy. So really great insights, Mike, and the future of the programme. So that is brilliant. We've got to the end of the speakers. We've got about 30 minutes or so now for the Q&A. One question that is starting to come in is around this, interest from industry. So we said right up at the top, this is 2.6 billion of public money. I've been reading in the literature that there's been 3 billion of industry co-funding alongside. So maybe 2 or 3 of you could give us some insights into, what's in it for industry. Who fancies a go on that first? Maybe a little raise of the hand on screen. Otherwise, I might spin the bottle. Mike, go on, good man. Let's go for you, Mike.
Very happy to come in. So yeah, our challenge is 170 million. The match funding is around 250 million. I think really what you've got here is a sector that wants to move, was already moving to some degree towards this, but the extra funding is sharing the risk in that move, allowing the sector to go faster, particularly by being able to demonstrate best practice and share and scale it as fast as we can. So that's one of the aims for us there. So yes, they're prepared to commit large amounts of money, but you have got a sector with construction that is margins are very, very slim. So generating large amounts of to be able to pour back into research is difficult for that sector compared to some others where they're driven by innovation.
Very good. Others? Brian, is that you coming in?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund is pretty much that we can't spend any money unless we've got a significant industry contribution into the programme. And so, we're focusing on areas where we're really having to create that industrial interest, but I think all the programmes have been successful in doing that. And I think it's because industry tends to recognise that the challenges that we're delivering are things which really need for them to be delivered in this way. So they're often very complicated and require many different stakeholders to get involved. They might often have a government and policy direction element to them, very many other things that make them very difficult for one organisation to tackle on their own. So I think that's why we see such tremendous involvement in the programmes.
Very much the collaboration aspect. Anyone else fancy that one, or should we move on? Okay. Got a couple of questions coming in. People appreciate the local focus, but there's a question around, don't we need to act nationally and internationally when tackling net zero as well? Have any of your programs got any sort of global aspect that we might want to bring out? Rob?
I can talk. I think the local to national, certainly we're doing a lot of work in that space. We're very much trying to optimise local systems, but within a national context. So one thing we have been trying to do is not do things locally, just kind of put the costs outside of the local boundary, so that the costs fall elsewhere. And actually, one of the things we're really trying to work out at the moment is how do you evaluate a local system in the context of a national system? So how do you attribute the carbon and the costs of a local system within a national one, so that we can really make sense of that. I think internationally, we're certainly hoping that we're going to be able to replicate some of this benefit in terms of businesses we're supporting, being able to take the knowledge and use that internationally, export that as knowledge services and as technical goods as well. Clearly, this year has not been easy for international engagement. We had planned to do a couple of missions this year, and we'll plan to do those next year as well.
I was on mute then. Whoops. Yes, good luck getting online again internationally. Jackie, you had a hand earlier.
Yeah, so Faraday is slightly different. The global aspect in particular for us is you can see this transformation, and you can see the world racing to try and solve those battery issues. And actually, the way Faraday's been set up is very much to create a real lightning rod to the UK. So a lot of the work we've been doing is with the Department of International Trade, with the devolved administration, particularly, for example, the Welsh Government, and you can see the results of this are actually things like the British Volt announcement, the Automotive Transformation Fund that's being run by the APC. We work in partnership all the time. There's a huge amount of effort to join up government around Faraday, so that actually those coming to the UK, those interested in the UK, can get to the right people a lot quicker, and facilitating that allows our companies to get better. So what's really happened with us is we've seen a great deal of academic collaboration globally, in particular. It's easier to do that in some ways. We have a MOU with JCESA, which is the US, it's topical for today actually, the US Energy Centre, JCESA, that people I'm sure online will know. What we see in our CR&D community is interest from major battery companies worldwide, and there's pros and cons to that in terms of keeping IP sticky to the UK and that economic benefit back to the UK. But we're definitely seeing a massive what's the word I'm looking for? Competitive advantage for the UK in actually having all those people able to signpost and work together. So the three pillars that I talked about and all that number of people, actually on the flip of that in government, I think at the end of September we had around 60 people from 40 different government departments and arm's length body doing a workshop to really try and look at strategy and how to join up. And the thing that does is give you the ability to signpost very slickly, very well, but also to work as a team to welcome those global customers here.
Well, I mean, that gives us a real insight into there's real benefits of collaborating with others, but your point around keeping IP sticky to the UK, because obviously we're trying to help the UK prosper from this, is really key and really quite a delicate balancing match. We're getting some other questions in around, people are really appreciating the insight that you provided. What do you guys are at the forefront of the road to net zero. What insights do you have about this road to net zero in delivering these programs? Has anything changed for you? Did you have some assumptions up front that have just been blown away? Or Jackie, looks like you're keen.
Well, I feel like I should speak because I put that graph up of the different sectors, right? Yeah. So COVID's really interesting. We talk about behavioural change, or Rob talked very much about behavioural change, for example, and society changing. What we've seen for an EV point of view is actually you're starting to see EV sales actually higher in Europe than diesel. You're starting to see the Model 3, for example, from Tesla being the biggest selling car at different points. Now, that's going to have a bit of a bounce as internal combustion engines get discounted and lots of other bits and pieces going. And it's very, very small numbers, so it's still very fragile. But I think what we do have is that road to that net zero. If in the middle of a crisis, because we had a similar, or not similar, but we had an economic crisis in 2008, but if the COVID crisis doesn't result in massive bounce back, switching on of all our coal-fired power stations and going back to the way we are, then actually this is the moment where you're going to get significant behavioural change. And when you think about Mike's challenge or Rob's challenge or any of the industrial challenges, that's where you're going to see significant change, hopefully.
Excellent. Anyone else want to come in on that one, or shall I move us on? Rob?
Yeah, just a real quick one. I think, when we started the Energy Revolution Challenge, we were putting that case together in 2017. And that was before, we legislated for net zero, still aiming for 80% reduction. And I think the thing that's changed for me is just the pace at which everything is not only needed to happen, but actually the pace at which things are happening. I think we're seeing the decreases in costs continuing in a way that people weren't expecting. We're seeing, the potential of lots of new solutions to combine to create the right services for the future. So I think our pace of change is going to increase as well. It's going to continue to increase. And we're going to need to take a more agile approach to net zero, to the journey to net zero, as a result of that pace change.
I want to tweak this question a little bit, Bruce. There's one coming in for you in terms of, given the enormous changes across the economy regarding net zero, and we talked about 2.3 billion across the whole of ISCF, similar amounts of matching from industry. Is it enough though, to actually be able to turn the dial?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really easy to say that there's no chance of it being enough. I think, and I've stood up in these fora before and gone, in an ideal world, the number associated with my challenge would be 10 times as big, to significantly nudge the dial. So the reality is that, many of the challenges, and certainly mine, is to act as an often overused word, but a catalyst for change.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're doing things that demonstrate, if you make these sort of investments in innovation, this will happen, and then encourage, to build upon each step. And I think that's what we're already starting to see across the foundation industries. We started on the premise that doing cross-sector stuff would catalyse, and it has done. And now it's building, and the pressure is on. How do we do more faster, to come back to what some of the others have said in the last few minutes?
Excellent. So really helping the first movers. This money helps the first movers, and then hopefully the market then builds the momentum itself. Mike, you had a hand up.
Well, yeah, I think there's a little bit on that. When you're doing really good innovation, I think you tend to get a lot of benefits that you're not necessarily expecting. And I think the thing I've seen over and over again is net zero should be precious about its own agenda. If you're working towards net zero and trying to do things in a better way, you tend to find a lot of other co-benefits. And we keep trying to sell it on this is for net zero. But if you make a home more energy efficient, you tend to make it more acoustically sound. So you don't have any problems with feedback when you're on a conference call, because there's builders outside. And you tend to make it more comfortable. You tend to make the air quality inside it better. So you're healthier when you're having to live at home all the time because you're in a global pandemic. So there's a whole lot of things that become as co-benefits when you're driving towards, high aspirations. And I think that's really important for us to remember. And I think we've seen examples of that over and over again across all of these challenges.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, then we've got a theme coming through here. Carbon charging, carbon capture and storage, those sorts of questions. So kind of, where does carbon charging fit into some of these solutions? And also, some of the solutions will be carbon capture and storage. How do we get that out of the atmosphere totally? How do we get it away from the earth is kind of the heart of this question. So any thoughts on those topics? Bruce, got to be careful. I thought that was a raised hand there. Brian is going to come in. Here you go. Oh, you're on mute. That's one today.
There's a number of elements to that question. I think one of the key points is that if we look at what the Committee on Climate Change has said about the technologies and approaches we're going to need to decarbonise and reach net zero in the UK, then carbon capture and storage is an essential part of that, and most of the energy systems modelling work that's been done shows that this leads to the least cost solution. I think there's also an issue around recognising the scale of what needs to be achieved. So sometimes there is a suggestion that some solution can work, and at small scale it really can. But at big scale, if you're talking about taking CO2 and turning it into something else, you will end up with far too much of that something else. That's what all of the calculations show. So it doesn't say you shouldn't do it at all, But the sort of idea that we could take this CO2 and put it somewhere off the earth, doing that by 2050 is impossible. We have no idea of any technology that would deliver that. And if we don't do it by then, we are all toast. So I mean, it's got to be done with something that we know how to do it, that we've got really high levels of confidence that it will work, and that we can start building these projects now, because 2050 is not far away.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing some good scoping to that, Bryony. That's very good. Bruce?
Yeah, just to pick up on the back of what Bryony was saying, and I have to do hands up. I admit I'm biased on this one, because my job immediately prior to this one was to run the UK Carbon Capture and Storage Research Centre.
Oh.
So you're not going to hear me go, oh, that, So, absolutely, it's very much part of the mix. And I wholeheartedly agree with Bryony about the scale piece. And the industries that I've worked over my career, particularly steel and others, they all see that at the moment that's a major option for them, and have got to drive towards it. But they also know it's not the whole solution for them in terms of net zero. There's plenty of other things they've got to do, and that's really where TFI, say, comes along. We start to look at the energy efficiency side of it. We look at the resource efficiency side of it, bring in those wider environmental benefits. So it's not just about CO2, the sort of side benefits that Mike was talking about. So yeah, absolutely, CCS, hydrogen, they're very much part of the mix, but there's also a lot of other stuff across all these challenges that needs to be done to deliver on a societal level.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. Jackie, I think that was a hand.
Oh, just a comment, really. I think when you've got something so transformational as this, we have to remember that complexity precedes simplification. A lot of the questions here are asking for the simple answers, right? Why are you still looking at lithium-ion batteries as one of the questions in the thing? Why aren't you looking at graphene supercaps? And the answer is we are, but the answers aren't simple. The answers are it's a complex problem, and at the moment we're still in that space where we're trying to get to the points where you can really understand it, develop what you need to develop, and understand all of those aspects, but also be pragmatic. And I think that's what Bryony and Bruce were just saying, that actually we have to understand it and move all of it forward. It's not a case yet of actually having that simple answer, as much as we want a simple answer. There's a place actually for almost all of these technologies. It's being really canny about how to find that place and make it work in a commercial sense as well, that consumers want to buy it, can live with it, and can take it forward.
That's very useful. Thank you. We've got some really nice feedback for you all. This is one of them, a great overview of the challenge programs. Thank you. So thank you, presenters. And then following a question, we've heard about industrial clusters, foundation industries, energy model pilots, etc. We have a good range of activity across the UK, so acknowledging some of the slides. But there's a sort of, are we compounding a sort of urban, metropolitan, rural divide, a north-south or east-west, and sort of in the decarbonisation of sectors? And this also came up a little bit. Some of the literature I read, high concentration of the funding is in the West Midlands, which sounds good. Lots of the research is in Scotland and Wales. So maybe you can just give us a sense of how you're dealing with this. I think government calls it levelling up. How do we make sure, and particularly for rural areas, rural challenges are unique, is the very last phrase in this question. I had a few hands all waving at me. I think, Mike, you were first.
Well, as I said, buildings are everywhere. We're looking largely at social infrastructure, because that's where government sees the benefit in looking at taking a whole life value approach, rather than just knock me up the cheapest school. Give me the one that does what it needs to do. But this platform approach means if you start to build more factories to build the components for buildings, you can put those factories anywhere in the country. And in actual fact, you're not going to put them in high populous areas. What you'll want to do is, if you're, whether you agree with it or not, whether you're building an extension to Heathrow, is you can't do all that work on site. You have to take these things from off site and bring them in. And that's the great thing. We can go and put these factories wherever there's a need for them, where the social dividend will be highest, where we have, say, we've got a surplus of manufacturing skilled workers needing jobs. So the benefits come throughout the country. with this. That's the real aim within our challenge, and it's one of the pleasures of working on this, is you really do realise that this will help everybody.
As I was on mute then as well, Rob. Thank you, Mike. Rob coming in.
Yeah, I think it is a good challenge because they're right. There are particular challenges in rural areas that don't necessarily map from urban. In the Energy Revolution Challenge, we are spreading across. We probably have a bit more of a bias towards urban areas, but if you've ever been to Orkney, it's quite hard to spot the skyscrapers in Kirkwall. It's pretty rural. And Project Leo in Oxfordshire is a very rural environment as well. It's all of the stuff around Oxford, not Oxford itself. So half of our portfolio of demonstrators are pretty rural. And actually, there's key opportunities in the rural settings as well, in terms of having potentially more flexibility in what you can and can't do because there's more space. So learning what can be done on a rural basis is as important as learning on an urban models as well. As I said earlier, I think we need these variety of models across the UK that are going to be able to work for what's available locally.
Excellent, thank you. Bruce.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on from my challenges perspective. Actually, the map Brian put up earlier is really useful because that clearly flags up the predominant heavy manufacturing regions within the country. So you won't be surprised to find that a lot of the work we're doing it does deliver into those regions. But the other side of that coin is not all foundation industries are alike. So whereas bulk chemicals and steel are definitely within those zones that Brian described, cement and ceramics, for instance, are much more distributed around the country, and that leads to the needs for some different solutions for them, and also means that we're engaged with wider regions in the country than you might immediately think if you think about foundation industries.
Very good. So Jackie, I think I saw you flag a bit earlier, and then I think Bryony after that.
So I was just going to flag, actually, for us, we're doing quite a lot to try and bring as much of the talent across the UK into Faraday. It's such a complex problem, electrification of transport. I look at the other, on the call and think, oh my God, the complexity of what we're actually trying to do is huge, right? There is very much a Team UK feel to what we're doing, and we've, it's an absolute pleasure to find those real specialisms around all of the country where you can invest and put money in. The flip of that is also the use case. So we've just launched an innovation network around cross-sector batteries. And actually the job that group is doing is actually really looking at the different use cases for batteries, whether you're sailing your luxury yacht out of some lovely marina, or you're looking for a small tractor replacement on a rural farm in North Wales, right? Those use cases are also really important for us to understand, and it's difficult to separate at times the manufacturing of these products and the users of these products. Like the automotive market in the UK is one thing, the manufacturing of automotive in the UK is a different thing.
Very good, thank you, Jackie. And Bryony.
Yes, I think whoever asked this question can see it's one close to the hearts of all of us, intriguingly enough. Yeah, I think that it is a very sensible thing to decarbonise industries where you've got the maximum amount of emissions concentrated. That's obviously the sensible thing to do and has the biggest impact as quickly as possible. But we do have a project looking at how we would decarbonise a region in the Midlands to start to look at how industries that are remote from the potential for carbon capture and storage will achieve decarbonisation across their whole region. And then I think the other important thing to bring out is that in many of the projects that we will be funding, they're looking at how to produce hydrogen at usable scale. So basically replacing our use of natural gas with hydrogen. That requires a massive, massive set of infrastructure being built and a complete switch in what we do. But that production of hydrogen just enables so many decarbonisations around the country through transporting the hydrogen up in a pipeline to somewhere else. So it does have impacts outside the regions where the project actually takes place.
Excellent, thank you. I think we've all had a go at that one. You're right, Bryony, you're all passionate about that. So another question coming in on the stream, a nice one here. How does the UK, this is to you, Jackie, specifically, but maybe all of you could kind of take it in the context of your own sector. How does the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre envision the balance between collaboration? We've talked about some of these big knotty problems that need collaboration and co-creation to accelerate development versus, on the other hand, the sort of IP retention aspects, particularly for small businesses. So maybe it's just a small business person who's asking this question to help them grow, if possible, into larger challenger businesses that help stimulate the economy. So that challenge for small companies and their IP, maybe. Jackie, kicking us off.
So firstly, the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre has been set up to be open access. It also doesn't hold any IP, right? So that's great, okay? So you can go and use it either collaboratively in a project or hire it out yourself if you have sufficient to do that, or as part of a project, for example, in one of our round 4 projects, and they won't take the IP from you. You'll do that as per a normal IP agreement for one of our projects. I think the bigger problem, and one that we all wrestle with, is a lot of our investment does go into the SMEs, and we want that. We want to grow those SMEs. And the problem is you then do this brilliant thing and create brilliant IP, and in come large international companies from wherever, not in the UK, that potentially buy that out. So what we've been doing in the Faraday Battery Challenge is actually working at advisory group level with some of those bigger companies in the UK that could be the ones that actually, whilst they're global companies themselves, that their interests are in the UK, they have sufficient funding and money in the UK that they can buy that IP. And as we collaborate more, you build those trusting relationships so that you can see the SMEs in the Faraday Battery Challenge and in our community starting to really get some great traction. So I think a recent one was Hitachi Rail signed an MOU with Hyperdrive up in the Northeast. So we're doing what we can. I mean, it isn't a case. I know the US, for example, block that international buying out of IP from SMEs, for example. But we're not big enough to really have a market that can really tolerate that. But we're doing everything we can, and I think being that centre of mass is a real advantage. We're seeing a lot of interest into the UK rather than the other way. And if you think about how crazy the times are right now, that's not a bad indicator.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you've created a safer place than would normally be, in the centre to provide some advice to some of those companies in that position.
Yeah, and actually UK BIC does that, right? So let's say if you're an SME, UK BIC has just been permitted through the environmental permitting regs, just got planning. So actually what you can do is tap up and understand what a Part 2 environmental permit looks like and what the process is like, whether you're in the Midlands or you're in Thurso, for example. So that's the anti-power up, and Thurso potentially are going to have a significant facility put there. And you've got this interplay where you can more effectively navigate lots of the hurdles, and that's what we're really looking for. That's the mission approach, really, eliminating or making those hurdles a lot easier to navigate.
Excellent. Mike, you had your hand up early on this one, was that right?
Yeah, I think what we've been trying to do with ours is we recognise this from the beginning, but you're trying to create a level playing field to make it easier for new entrants to come in to our area, because these big system challenges need input from all sorts of areas. We need the best digital businesses coming in. We don't need the construction sector's version of digital innovation. We need a digital sector's version. Same with energy, same with manufacturing. And some real opportunities to open up there. And I think what you'll see with the contractors in construction is that they don't necessarily want to own that knowledge and that know-how which comes with the IP. They want to be able to access it easily. And the more people using it, the cheaper it becomes as well. So there's a real spirit of sharing around there, and I think those kind of things we've always got to think about and foster. Jackie.
Yeah, you just made me think. Well done, Mike. That happens occasionally. And go back to that graphene-based supercaps question we had earlier. Why that's not the answer? And I think what we're saying is we're trying to own the problem. because these problems are so complex. The more we can bring people to that problem and define it in their own terms, the more actually somebody working on graphene supercaps is going to find those commercial routes much quicker. And that's how you keep the IP, and that's how you grow the IP and make more economic success.
And yeah, a lot of it can be know-how. Certainly the process knowledge that is being picked up by companies now. You know, they're cleaning up their internal processes, and by thinking in a more manufacturing way, you can't really nail that down as IP. So and that becomes margin because you're more efficient straight away. So certainly in our area, this is all. There's not lots and lots of new technology. A lot of this is about the way you do things, the way you organise your sector, and that is sticky knowledge, because that's know-how, that's approach, and you know, it's capturing that. We're not. I think there might be a misconception we're funding lots of really highly advanced technology across the ISCF challenges. A lot of it is just getting people to be able to work together and share the risk in trying to work together in a new way, differently. And as you see, when you try it out, you go, oh my God, this does work like we always thought it would. Yeah. We can start moving that way faster.
That's good. That leads me on to almost my next question. But Bruce, did you want to have a quick go on that one? I'm not sure if that was a hand raised.
It was a scratch of ear, but I'll come in anyway. I think if I throw this out in the context of, if I ask the audience, do the words foundation industry and innovation go hand in hand in your head, then I have a nasty suspicion that for an awful lot of people, they won't do. Yeah. And that's A, because they can tend to be seen as old-fashioned industries, but B, also many of the companies in the sector have kind of acted as big beasts in the past, and they've said we're going to do everything ourselves and we know what we need. So the challenge is very much about leading all sorts of companies of shapes and sizes, and whether they're bringing the technology or whether they want to use it more into the innovation space, and genuinely encouraging them all to do more and better innovation, and in that way doing it together. So there were so many different angles at which you've got to approach this, bringing new technology in, new companies in, what sort of relationships do they want, get the big companies used to working with small companies that in many cases they're not. So it is about, I used the words catalyzing before, but I'll use it in this context again, forming a kind of glue and working relationships as much as actually just getting some projects off the ground to take an innovation forward. It's the learning that you can truly do innovation together and do it better is what works.
I think this is really insightful. It's you guys are all helping create the right body language in your own sectors such that this stuff happens, as you just said. We're running out of time, actually. There is a question that's coming from Mike, but I want you to all think about it. How does the cost of net zero buildings compared with a standard building design? And yes, I think cost is a big factor here. So maybe you could say, maybe start with you, Mike, but others, for your own sectors, is this all going to cost us a lot more?
Well, as you heard earlier, one of the things is we're trying to think about a whole life value. So, you might knock up a cheap building, but if it's costing you more to run it across the whole of its life cycle, what's the point? We're even coming to performance, though. Can it perform better at what it needs to do, which might matter in a school, for example? Can you make it so that the cognitive performance of the kids is enhanced? And that's why the government are kind of buying into it and saying, hang on a minute, we might actually be worth spending a little bit more at capital stage so that we save over the lifetime. But we've got a few issues, as I said. First of all, the way we build our buildings and operate them, largely, most buildings use more energy than they were designed to. So we're trying to iron that part out. But to answer the question, there's been some really good research done lately by the UK Green Building Council. And you can build something to what they call passive house standards, which is essentially uses virtually no energy whatsoever. The capital margin for a home or a commercial building is somewhere around 5 to 8%. Seems very small to me compared to the gains you would have over a lifetime. So no, it really doesn't add up in the long term. The business case for building things, it does not make sense.
Excellent. Bryony, quickly, we're in our last few minutes here now. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I'm doing the right thing and paying the price for it, as always, right? so yeah, in industry, there are going to be very substantial additional costs. I mean, one of the differences between decarbonising a power station and decarbonising industry is, you don't move the power station or stop using that power just because it's costing more, because you've got no choice. But with an industrial product, you can often import it from somewhere else. And so the government is very aware of this issue, of course, and many, many people in the industrial regions are aware of the huge potential for massive job losses if people start importing yet more products from overseas. So there are lots of people thinking about how to incentivize decarbonisation and who is going to pay the cost of it, but there will be a cost.
Just when the cost occurs. Thank you, Bryony. Jackie.
Yeah, no, just to echo that, I guess maybe for buildings and electric vehicles in particular. So we know there's an upfront cost, but we actually know the cost in 2020. What's really interesting and exciting for us is actually what the cost is going to be in 2030. So right now we know the full life cycle cost of a car. If it's all electric is beneficial. There's a net benefit. What we also know, though, in 10 years' time and 15 years' time, those industries will have brought that cost right down. I always try and tell people, you're trying to catch up 120 years of internal combustion engine technology, decosting, all that's coming, and it's coming at a pace, and that's really what we're here to do, is increase that pace.
Yeah, and it's not just financial costs, is it? It's air quality costs, it's climate costs, it's all those sorts
all of it.
All need to be calculated in.
Yep.
Well, folks, I did promise people a little break before. People might have things at 1 o'clock. People might have a cup of tea to go and get, comfort break, or maybe even see who's won the US election. So just a massive thank you. We've had loads of, I didn't mention it once, but we've had loads of comments around great presentations. Because we haven't quite got the audience on stream, it might only be me clapping, but a massive clap to you all. Thank you very much. And hope the rest of All Energy is a tremendous success. Thanks all, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers.